Well, Sharon, Micah, these parents tell me that they have no trouble with their son learning the history about any religion. It's when the school starts teaching him the faith.
The audacity of this school to think they can sit these children down and teach them whatever religion they please. It's preposterous.
Some Manhattan Beach Middle School parents feel the school has crossed the line.
This is it's illegal, basically. You can't teach religion in schools anymore, but apparently that, in this particular school at least, that's not the case.
They say they recently discovered their son's homework assignments on Islam were more about actually learning the faith than the history. One question asked him to write down teachings from the Quran.
What I saw written in these bubbles was the one true God, Allah, in one of the bubbles. And one of the other bubbles was all people must submit to Allah in another bubble. Now I turn the page over and I see the 5 pillars of Islam.
One of the 5 pillars he had to learn.
Shahada is the testimony of a faithful Muslim that Allah is the one true God.
It shouldn't be presented to them. They shouldn't be asked to know this.
They say the students should be taught the history behind religions, be it Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity, etc., just not the actual faith.
Can you imagine the outcry all over this country if children were bringing home paperwork that asked them to write down John 3:16 or asked them to write down the 10 Commandments?
And if it ended with the declaration of faith, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, that's what the equivalent. I mean, part of us, for our son, yeah, we'd be happy about that. But we understand, we're fair.
Other parents may
right,
not
we're
be.
reasonable people. We understand that doesn't belong in the school, in a public school.
And these parents tell me that they have met with the principal, but because nothing, at least in the near future, is going to change, they are going to pull their son out of that class. Now, we have also reached out to the school and left them a message, but at this point, haven't heard back yet. For now, reporting live in Manhattan Beach, Mary Beth McDade, we'll send it back to you.
Request for public comment, so I'll start with
Thank you. Good evening. There is only one God, Allah. People submit to Allah. Muhammad was the prophet of God. These are all phrases one would expect to hear uttered in a mosque or perhaps shouted on television by a Muslim imam or soldier. But unfortunately, that's not the case here. These were all phrases our son was asked to write down in his 7th grade social science class at Manhattan Beach Middle School. His teacher and his principal claimed that this was all part of the section pertaining to Middle Eastern history. But what does the recitation of the 5 pillars of Islam or the testimony of a faithful Muslim that Allah is the one true God have to do with history? The answer is absolutely nothing. It has more to do with religious dogma, which is strictly forbidden teaching in public schools. Would you have also had the students write, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, the Lord's Prayer, or John 3:16? No, you wouldn't, and I highly doubt that a Muslim parent would allow you to do so. When we asked the principal to have the illegal and offensive curriculum removed, he basically said his hands were tied because the curriculum was decided upon by the state. However, I want to remind the principal and the teacher and the board today that federal law trumps the California Board of Education curriculum standards, and the federal government has already given you permission to remove these materials because they are, in fact, illegal and a violation of students' rights set forth by the Establishment Clause. To add insult to injury, Principal Jackson initially told us that the same amount of time would be given to all religions in social science class. According to religioustolerance.org, there are 19 major world religions subdivided into 270 religious groups. You spent 3 weeks on Islam, so will you also spend 3 weeks on the other religions? It would be impossible. Principal Jackson later emailed us to say he was mistaken and that the sections on Christianity and Judaism were presented to the students in 6th grade. Well, our son wasn't enrolled here in the 6th grade, so how does he become exposed to all religions equally? This exact scenario is one of the reasons why the Establishment Clause was created in the first place, to protect children and citizens from unwanted exposure to religion. If Mr. Simon and Manhattan Beach Middle School had simply obeyed the law, our son wouldn't have been singled out and removed from class for 3 weeks, and we wouldn't be here today. Once again, federal law trumps the California Board of Education curriculum standards. So in closing, I want to make it abundantly clear that we are not anti-Islam, but pro-equality. Martin Luther King didn't march from Selma so that this school could shove its preferred religion down our throats while removing all others. And since you can't possibly spend the same amount of time on all religions, we are asking the board to remove any and all textbooks, worksheets, or assignments that pertain to teaching religious dogma of any kind, such as Allah is the one true God or the 5 pillars of Islam. Specifically, we're asking the board to remove the textbook entitled Medieval and Early Modern Times and all its related course material. Thank you.
Sorry if I got it wrong.
No, that's okay. So just to really pick up a much more prepared statement than I have. For those of you who, I'm sure you're familiar, this is the textbook in 7th grade. We've submitted to the board all of the materials. We have copies. This is really specifically the homework that kind of set us off. And so I don't know if all of you have seen it, but literally he came to us and said he was uncomfortable. And he said, I don't understand why I have to write this. He had to write here in the bubbles, for instance, Allah is one true God. All people must submit to Allah. So we just want to make it very clear a couple of things. One, we're Christians. We're not ashamed to say that, but we're not anti-Muslim. We're not anti-Islam. Like he said, we are for equality. We are for pro-establishment cause. And we want to be very clear that what we're really here tonight, and we have a number of people that are wonderful throughout the city of Los Angeles that have found this happening all over the place. We want to really invite all of you. We've researched, we know your parents, we know that you have children, we know that you're a wonderful, wonderful group of people who support our community. But we want you to know a couple of things very important. We're not going to waver on this. We're not going to sit down. We're not going to go away because the 3 weeks of Islam is over. It's not over for us. We really want to join forces with you. It's not. We don't see it as us against you or Mr. Jackson or Karina or anyone. We really know that you can't possibly know everything that's going on in the school down to this detail. So we really are here to kind of shine a light so you know what's going on and really want to work with you. We're putting together a very, very respected group of people throughout the country. I don't want to say to fight this, but it is a fight. And the fight is the curriculum that is being introduced to our children is an indoctrination. And we're very, very opposed to this. And we will not waver on it. So again, what we really want to do is open up the discussion starting here tonight, figure out who we can start to have a conversation with. I'm sure you'll notice that the group of people we have here are very, very well versed in this as a topic. And we have Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer who have submitted to the board kind of their short bios, who are willing to really work with all of you to spearhead this as an issue, to look at the curriculum further, look at the homework that's being presented, take it. We understand that in some ways your hands may be tied, but then where do we go? We'll go to the state. We'll go as high as we need to go to work with this. We want to work with you. We believe in all of you as a community to, we'll give you all the credit. For us, this is not credit. This is about doing it and standing with you to take it as high as we need to go to show other communities how they can remove this from their schools. So we really present it, again, as kind of who's with us. And we have all due respect for Mr. Jackson as the middle school principal of the year. And what better effort with that title to take to the state that this is something very important that we want to go. Thank you.
Sean Tell.
Good evening. I'm from San Francisco. I'm a graduate of Lowell High School. I attended the University of Miami a while ago. The reason why I stand here is history is one of the most important subjects of a civilization. And, excuse me because I'm a little nervous, but I behoove all those present to familiarize yourself and look at the core of a philosophy, an ideology, a way of life before authorizing its instruction to impressionable young minds. Present all sides if you must, because that is what authentic, genuine education is all about. Indoctrination does not allow that. To only rely on emotions in order to make nice will only result in the downfall of that particular institution or naive society. Actions speak louder than words. So whether you are a Christian, Muslim, or any religious persuasion, it is pertinent to look at the core of the ideology, philosophy, or belief system you follow. And just for the sake of short time, I would like to use the excuse that Jesus owned slaves. Human bondage is one of the worst kinds for anyone. I don't care your color, your race, gender. And in order for Western society to right its current disintegration, false platitudes and wishful thinking is not the way. The truth should be the entire picture as it is, only sensible, logically, and without emotion. I leave you with recommendations to get a full picture of history, as opposed to one slanted, superficial, and although well-meaning, incredibly erroneous view. Other views on Islam that I have studied. One book, Sita Ramgoya. He was Mahatma Gandhi's associate in freeing India from British rule, and he fought like hell for the non-partition of Pakistan. I have met some of these people. I have met persecuted people. I've looked into their eyes. I was a flight attendant. I traveled the world. And what I've seen, I cannot even go into. Another book is John Azuma, and it's called The Legacy of Arab Islam in Africa. And he's very good. Sorry, it's my time. Can I please mention one more?
Yeah, you can wrap up. If you could wrap it up.
Okay, the last book that I really wanted to say was How Greek Science Passed to the Arabs by Delancey O'Leary. It was first published in Great Britain in 1949. And I speak for the dead. I speak for the Hindu Kush. I speak for the African enslaved in the West, not that went to the Middle East, and not just the Atlantic slave trade. But most of all, I speak for the Hellenes, the Greeks, whose last book should be required for all Western society. Thank you.
Thank you. Russ Kingston.
Hello. I was raised in a non-religious household, so I'm not criticizing Islam in favor of another religion. But I would like to show you a different side of the so-called religion of peace. These are a list of chapter and verse from the Quran showing the Quran's intolerance of other religions. The first chapter of the Quran says Allah shows us the right path and not that of those who anger him, like the Jews, or go astray, like the Christians. You can find this on the website Quran.com. Check me and confirm that I'm giving you a faithful translation. Quran 2, verse 256. Muslims love to quote, there is no compulsion in religion. But the very next verse, verse 257, says, but disbelievers in Allah will burn in hell forever. Quran chapter 3, verse 19, Islam is the true religion. Disbelievers must answer to Allah. Quran 3, verse 28, don't take unbelievers instead of believers for friends, except to protect yourself, but beware of Allah. Quran 3, verse 85, only Islam is acceptable. Quran 3, verse 112, shame, humiliation, poverty cling to Jews, Christians for disobeying Allah and killing the prophets. Quran 4, verse 89, don't befriend unbelievers, kill apostates wherever you find them. Quran 4, verse 144, again, don't befriend unbelievers, which would turn Allah against you. Quran 4, verse 157, Christ was not killed nor crucified. Jews were confused by, I guess, the chaos of the moment. Quran 4, verse 171, Jesus was a messenger, not the son of Allah, and do not say Trinity, cease. Quran 5, verse 14, Christians forgot the covenant. Allah sowed hate between them until the resurrection day. Quran 5, verse 51, don't befriend Jews and Christians. If you do, you're one of them, and Allah will not guide you. Quran 5, verse 54, if anyone leaves Islam, Allah will find others who will submit to him and who will fight the unbelievers. Quran 5, verse 101, don't ask questions, the answers will upset you. Quran 6, verse 40, if Allah's wrath were to hit you, who else would you call for aid? Quran 8, verse 39, fight till other religions are gone and Islam reigns supreme. Quran 9, verse 23, don't ally with unbeliever fathers or brothers. Doing so is wrong. Quran 9, verse 29, fight disbelievers until they pay jizya, which is a religious poll tax, and feel subdued. Quran 9, verse 30, Jews... Okay, one or two more. Quran 9:33, Islam is to dominate all religions, even though others may hate it. Quran 19:35, Allah needs no son. When He commands, He says only be, and it is. Quran 48:29, 48 verse 29, Muslims are hard against disbelievers and merciful among themselves, bowing on the forehead marks of the believers and rages the unbelievers.
Thank you very much.
Know the Quran.
Thank you. Steve Evanson? Thank you.
That's close enough.
All right. All right.
Go for it.
Hey, good evening. Manhattan Beach Middle School is a public-funded school with taxpayer dollars, and not a madrasa funded by oil money from Saudi Arabia. The impressionable and growing minds being taught Islamic dogma before they learn the history of this great country is absurd. Public schools are for educating, not indoctrinating young minds into a particular religion or ideology. And I use the term ideology to describe Islam, since religion is actually the smallest part of Islam itself. Only 14% of Islam is the Quran. 86% is Sunnah, which is the traditions and biography of Muhammad. So if you know Muhammad, you know Islam. Muhammad, who it is said, received the words of Allah via the angel Gabriel over a period of time, are what comprise the Quran. Muhammad is the supreme authority on Islam. It doesn't matter what some Muslim tells you, because Muhammad is the supreme authority. Are you aware that Islam does not have a golden rule? It's the only religion that does not have a golden rule to it. That is because it tells its followers to treat unbelievers differently than believers. Kafirs, which are non-believers, have no rights in Islam, and women have many fewer rights than do men. You know, Mein Kampf is banished in many countries because of its hate. If you take out the 7%, which is hatred towards Jews, does that make it a good book? Mein Kampf reads like a love story compared to the Quran. How an ideology which condones pedophilia, polygamy, and violence is allowed to be taught to young children is beyond me. But let's look at a few historical facts. Jihad, which is obligatory for every able Muslim, has killed over 270 million people over the 1400 years and continues today. Islam and Sharia go hand in hand. They are not separable. Islam sold every slave to America. There's no multiculturalism in Islam. Islam is dualistic. The Meccan period was peaceful. Muhammad preached, but was very unsuccessful. Then came the Medinan period of the violence and war. Convert, pay the jizya, or be killed led to the growth of Islam. Two important words you need to remember about Islam. Abrogation, which means a later chapter in the Quran replaces an earlier chapter. And taqiyya, which means it's permissible to lie to a non-believer if it's to advance Islam. I propose the following. Look forward to a reply from the school board. That Islam be removed from the curriculum at Manhattan Beach. 2 seconds. Because, as I briefly pointed out, it is an ideology, not just a religion. It is more akin to Nazism than any other world religion. Starting immediately, I asked the school board to prohibit teachers from using any Islamic supplements outside of the textbook and offering the students their opinion. Starting immediately, no teacher will assign students any homework regarding Islamic dogma. Thank you very much. And I brought you a long book here which gives facts on Islam. I included a copy of what I just gave, and there's several factual brochures in there. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Chris Chrisman. This is the second time I have spoken to the school board about teaching Islamic dogma in the middle school. I have deep roots in Manhattan Beach. In the 1930s, my grandfather was a preacher. He cashed in his life insurance policy and purchased a half-city block at 34th and Highland, which was just a sand dune in those days. He began to build houses to supplement his meager preacher's salary. Those houses are still standing, just as he built them. My father attended Manhattan Beach schools. The point I'd like to make tonight is that books are important. Schools need to select books that use factual information and are free of religious dogma. The excuse that everybody is using a particular book does not mean the book is good for the students, no more than McDonald's hamburgers are good for a city diet of young people. This is an English translation of the Quran. It's a 1734 translation by George Salley. This particular translation is sometimes called the Jefferson Quran because America's third president had a copy of it in his library. In January 2007, the first Muslim congressman, Keith Ellison, used Jefferson's Quran to swear his oath of office. The first time a congressman has ever used a document other than the Bible. Keith Ellison's stunt was foolish because he never checked the contents of this particular Quran. George Salley translated the Quran into English specifically to warn non-Muslims about the evil content of the Quran. He stated in the introduction that Muhammad pretended to be a messenger of God, and that it was beyond dispute that Muhammad was the author and chief contriver of the Quran. On the very first page of the translation, George Salley confirmed that Muslims recite daily a prayer that demonizes Jews and Christians. He didn't make that conclusion on his own. He used the authoritative Muslim commentaries on the Quran as his reference. Thomas Jefferson studied the Quran to understand why the Islamic sultanates were attacking American merchant ships and taking cargo and passengers as hostage. At that time, the United States was paying out 20% of the federal budget in tribute to Islamic sultanates. Had Keith Ellison understood the content of this Quran, he would have never taken his oath of office on it. I urge you to look at the contents of the books you're using for the students and withdraw all of the materials, particularly inside Islam, because it is filled with Islamic dogma, false statements, and pro-Islamic propaganda. It needs to be withdrawn. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Here to support the parents and the other students in the district. I'm not so much concerned about teaching the history of Islamic civilization. I'm concerned about its one-sidedness. That it's presented in a sanitized way. It is presented the way people both frequently understand Judaism and Christianity, and universalist reasons. that apply equally to all. However, in the case of Islam, it does not. As the earlier speaker noted, it is dualistic, and it does not have a golden rule. Now, just as an example, I want to read one sentence from the study guide that's been distributed by the state teachers. There's a heading. What is the Sunnah of Muhammad? What are hadiths? And the paragraph begins. When Muhammad's wife, Aisha, was asked about her husband's character, she stated simply, quote, it was the Quran, meaning that his life was the Quran in application. Based on this premise, Muhammad is considered by all Muslims as a guide and role model for living a successful life. Muslims believe that one who emulates Muhammad receives God's mercy and forgiveness. Following Muhammad's example contributes to a Muslim's efforts to fulfill obligations to God and gain entrance into paradise. And note that's paradise, not heaven. It's a very different thing. I would like everyone here to know that the wife, Aisha, that's cited in this paragraph, was 6 years old when Muhammad married her. And the marriage was consummated when she was 9. Now, the textbook, which was held up earlier, that this study guide is based on, is a textbook for 7th graders. That's 12-year-olds. They are 3 years older than Muhammad's wife when he consummated his marriage to her. Thank you.
Teresa Veris.
I have to agree with everyone that's spoken so far. I want to just ask, what's the main goal of teaching? I don't think anybody would discuss that and say, well, it shouldn't be accurate or it shouldn't be full of truth. That's obviously the goal, right? Is to get information and to get accurate information. I understand, obviously, dealing with these different grade levels that we're going to be limited with what we're able to teach, but I sort of have this idea in my head of teachers accepting a book report with massive gaps in it, and that's sort of what we're being presented, just as a whole in society, with what is being taught of Islam. The points that were discussed are out of their sources, not how we read them, out of their Quran, hadiths, their information that they expose to us. So in one way, I want to say, yeah, let's bring it on, expose all religions. What's the bottom line of those religions? If you expose it, you will get the best human example that they all follow, peace be upon him, who married a 6-year-old. I can't even get into the description of what happened in between before he consummated his marriage. That's just one example. So in a way, would we bring porn into the class? What would we bring to them? Let's dig into it. There needs to be some, I don't know what the actual answer is, but we can't be frogs boiling in water. You know what I mean? Hitler was brought up. How do you guys think he came into power? That was just one man with his political ideas. This is a holy religion who follows somebody who's a pedophile, whose God claims to be the best of all deceivers. Takia was brought up. Allah calls them to deceive as long as it's on behalf of Islam. So we sit here in the West and just fall for it. At least check the sources. That would be the main thing we would do as teachers accepting a book report, right? You're not going to just accept a book report and say, well, I read it this way, and there's massive gaps that you know are not there. So at least I beg you to at least go to some of the sources and check into what the actual message is. I'm not afraid of having religions exposed, but this is a complete other ballgame, you guys.
Thank you.
I was here a month and a half ago. I didn't get your email on me that you promised. if you would get that to me. You know, we've heard from a lot of people and we've heard a lot about Islam, but really this is a national debate of multiculturalism and Islam and a whitewashing of Islam, where we don't have the whole history. I mean, just one PBS event that I saw a little bit ago was on how 95% of slavery from Africa was done by the Muslims. Is that in your textbook? This textbook, I believe you said, was adopted in 2009 when Obama came into office. And it basically, how many of you were taught Islam when you were kids in school? Okay, how many of you had a course on the doctrines of Islam? Okay, you know, we learned about some of the history of Islam and some of the history in Europe and the domination of 1,400 years through the Dark Ages of Islam, through the Dark Ages of Europe. But really what we're dealing with is we're leaving off large gaps of history and facts in this national debate. Islam is a religion of peace, say our leaders over and over again. Give me a break. How many of you believe Islam is a religion of peace? Do we see peace in the Islamic world? I've been in Karachi, Pakistan. I've been in Tehran, Iran. I have been throughout Turkey. I have been throughout the Middle East. I have been in Jordan. My experience is not that Islam is a religion of peace. Is your experience that? How about Boko Haram? Are they Islam? How about ISIS? Are they Islam? We have little girls being turned into slaves across this world right now as we speak. Tens of thousands of Christians have been killed or displaced in current day Iraq. It hardly hits the news. Is this being taught as part of that curriculum? But probably the bottom line, besides this national cultural debate that we're having, and it's sitting right here in Manhattan Beach because of this parent who was subjugated, why didn't, is the principal over here, Jackson?
Mr. Jackson?
Mr. Jackson?
He's right.
Right there. Why didn't you respond to that parent?
Oh, I did. I had
Why did you have his student take him
sir, it's a public
Oh, I can't do that?
No,
Okay,
this is
sorry.
an inquisition, so please just...
Oh, well, I would ask the board why the principal then did not respond to this parent appropriately. Could have had a meeting, could have looked at it, and I think my time is up.
Thank you.
So I would say, let us have reasoned minds and make sure that we teach this equitably. Thank you.
Robert,
please give me that to me.
I have some documentation for the board. On the first page of your book, Inside Islam, on page 2, the chapter 1, Development of Islam, that makes the statement that Abraham took a 1,000-mile journey from Canaan to Mecca to build the Quran. Okay, now if you, I have documentation here. It goes through the Old Testament, and it documents all journeys of Abraham. And Abraham never left the land of Canaan except for when he went to Egypt during the famine in Canaan. So. There is no reason, there is no biblical reason to believe that Abraham journeyed to the Kaaba in the city of Mecca. There's no reason to believe that he went to Mecca to build the Kaaba. Okay, and then also for another one, I did a Google search of the history of Mecca. And then they say that the historical records suggest that Mecca, in what is now in the nation of Saudi Arabia, was settled around the 4th century A.D. And there was no Mecca before the 4th century, and no Kaaba before the 5th century. Means that the foundation whatsoever underpins Islamic tradition. These Islam as Muhammad standalone 7th century invention. So here's the documentation on that, and then on the same page you said God had already revealed himself in part through Moses and Jesus. According to the Quran, Jesus was a blasphemer because he claimed to be the Son of God. From an Islamic tract, they quote the Quran, Surah 11, Surah 121, 1 to 2. Say, He is Allah, the One, Allah the Eternal, Absolute. He begotteth not. They're referring to John 3:16. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. That's blasphemy according to Muslim, because God did not have a son.
Thank you.
And so what you have here is just Islamic propaganda.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Chief Hardin.
Boy, seems like we should just start preaching here. This is interesting because I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, I work in Los Angeles area, and I want to give you a quick little scenario here. On May 12th, 1779, when the chiefs of Delaware Indian tribe brought 3 of their young children to be trained in American schools, George Washington graciously spoke, saying that you do well to wish to learn our ways, our arts, and above all, the religion of Jesus Christ. These will make you a greater and happier people than you already are. Congress will do everything they can to assist you in that wise intention, and to tie the knot of friendship and union so fast that nothing shall ever be able to loose it. Washington and the Delaware chiefs all knew the importance of assimilation through an uniform set of principles and habits that would inevitably advance the language of the American founding culture and make them one people with a common national sentiment. And that would be effective only, or not only, the safety and happiness of themselves, but of their children's children. I find it interesting how today we have sort of swept away, the old idea of the wall of separation of church and state has caused us to say, move into the classrooms and say that no mention of religion should be allowed. And yet the Supreme Court has ruled against that. I mean, they said that we could talk about the Bible and perhaps the Quran in a historic reference. Make sure that that historic reference is true, based on truth. When we talk about the history of Islam, as we have heard here by many testimonies, Islam is not quite reflective of our American founding. In fact, it's more on the negative side. But when it comes to the Bible, that's a different thing. So I just wonder if you allow this to go forward, since that void has to be filled, if we remove the Bible, which we have done, some void has to be filled with something, because we have to teach about the language of our founding, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, at some point. I mean, we have all but become ignorant of it. Most Americans haven't a clue as to what our founding principles are all about. That Declaration mentions God 4 times as lawgiver, supreme judge of the world, creator, and providence, or divine protector. And that, I just want to say, in a sense, that kind of brings the question of, and I'll close with this, the creator. Jesus Christ, the creator. as the Bible implies. But of course, we've cast that out. So just remember the void that you're filling when you take out the truth.
Amen.
Thank you very much. So now we'd like to move on to the next topic, which is our board member. So we have finished the presentation and action items, and we are moving on to staff and public submitted items. Dr. Matthews, an item here on teaching Islamic.
So this is an item that's been submitted by a member of the public, and so we are, it's a discussion item for us, and I would like to address the issue. As you guys know, I'm a former secondary history teacher, on top of being a principal and a superintendent, and very proud of that. And I'm highly aware of the role of religion in teaching history. You cannot teach, I don't believe, the settlement of America, for example, without knowing about the Puritans and what they believed and why they were being persecuted in their homeland. You cannot know about Dr. Martin Luther King, who's been referred to earlier, without knowing he was a Christian minister, and without knowing the power of the churches in the civil rights movement at that time. Religion is essential in modern American history, it's essential in colonial American history, and it's certainly essential in world history. We get our guidance, and it is not at all illegal to teach about the tenets of religion. It is illegal to proselytize about religion. But when the people get together in the state of California to form the state framework for California social science, it is no small committee. It is a large committee. And by the way, that committee is convening again, as they've been meeting the last 2 years to revise the California state standards. And you have high school teachers, you have elementary teachers, you have principals, you have college, you have historians, you have authors, you have textbook companies, and all those people gathered together to try to figure out what is the essential part to teach in history. And you saw very recently Stanford University, I believe, afforded that you guys, just developed a new history curriculum. So it is something that everybody does consider. And there are massive debates in what should be taught and what should not be taught. And one of the most difficult things is what not to include, because there are so many things that people want to include. In my opinion, the idea of not including the world's 5 major religions in the 6th and 7th grade curriculum is an idea that we should not at all question from the state. We do teach about Hinduism, about Buddhism, about Christianity, about Judaism, and about Islam. Those are the religions that are taught over 6th and 7th grade. And by the way, in 7th grade, Christianity is taught again when the Protestant Reformation occurs. And in 8th grade, Christianity is taught again when you have settlement of America. So religion is a constant theme in what we discuss. And I know there's issues that have been brought forward about the 5 pillars of Islam, about the role of Muhammad, and about the role of the Quran. All those things are certainly taught in our curriculum. They are specifically prescribed in the California framework, and they are in the textbook. Similarly, you have Abraham and Moses and the 10 Commandments taught when it comes to Judaism unit. You have Jesus Christ, the crucifixion and the resurrection taught in the Christianity unit. You have you have quotes from Matthew and Luke. You have the letter from Paul in the curriculum. All those things are actually in the textbook. This is teaching about religion, and it's important to have those roles taught so you can understand about A, the civilizations at that time, and B, later on it gives you context for some of the world's great problems of our time. If you look at you were all mentioning the Model United Nations issues. Well, those, I mean, every one of those students can come. We've had our students had to argue for women's rights from the position of a conservative Muslim state. Well, you better know what they believe in. You better know what those religions stands for, and that starts early on in the curriculum. And so we are completely following the state framework. We are, and our teachers are working very hard, and scrutiny can be a good thing, because what it makes us do is look at everything very carefully, and I'm not opposed to that. I'm very proud to be a place where we can stand forward and let people come to us and talk about what they believe. and had the right to speak about that and not be criticized for it. That's what this country's all about too. But in terms of us banning a certain part of our curriculum, if people disagree with it, I'm not going to endorse that. I believe totally in what we are doing, and I believe that we can always listen, we can always do that. And right now, the process is happening at the state. I mean, if people are asking what to do, go forth and give your opinion to the state of California Department of Education, because they're going through that. They have sent out the state framework for review. I mean, it's a very public process, a very open process where anyone can give their opinions about what should and what should not be included. I have been in communication with the state about that, with some of the concerns we felt we have put forward. And they said they've heard those concerns, and yet in the drafts that they include, Islam certainly remains as a major component of what is going on. So again, we are a public institution. People like to put things on the agenda, but I am not at all recommending to you that we take that out of our curriculum, nor that we take out the other religions that we include in our curriculum. I believe that the state standards are in good faith. I believe that we have an obligation to let our kids know about the various religions out there, to make sure they are educated about everything that they can learn so they can better understand the world today. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board has about that, but that's my thought on the item presented to you today.
When will they be coming up with a new standard? Is it for the 15-16 school year?
I believe it'll be for the 16-17 school year. And of course, all the textbook companies are waiting for that to come out so they can know what to adjust as they come forward as well.
Standards as it relates to changes for Common Core, or is it just time in the process to reevaluate the state standards?
So yeah,
because everything changes right for Common Core.
Interesting question. Dr. Geithman, please correct me if I misstate this. So Common Core is not dealing with historical concepts per se. They are not saying what should be taught in history. What they are saying, what we're talking with our teachers about, is how do you analyze issues in history? How do you go deeper on those things? How do you write about them? How do you communicate about them? How do you study multiple sources so to better understand things? And so if there are controversial sources, how do you do that at an age-appropriate level? So that will be addressed in the history framework, but that will be from the main guide. What we're talking about here is the actual content standards. And so, the curriculum I was talking about from Stanford University, it asks 100 questions in a year, right, that you would deal with primary sources for and deal with all that. So that's a very different kind of history than lecturing about things, but hearing only from a teacher's perspective. And that's the more Common Core approach.
Yeah.
But no, it is not going to address the actual content standards.
It wasn't triggered by Common Core readdressing like the actual standards by grade or.
It will be enhanced by Common Core, but you're right, it was not triggered by its time.
Okay.
New history to be included.
Right.
Right.
The reality of the situation is that we are required to teach state standards, and we are not the organization to address about changing this. It's the state.
I would agree with that, and but I'm going a little further and saying I'm just fine with the state push forward.
I don't know. I mean, nobody's asking them to teach what's right or what's wrong. It's just what is believed by each of the five religions.
Correct.
And you've gone through and checked the coursework and things and talked to the teachers. John, I assume is addressing.
If there are individual questions about a particular assignment, the principals will have a look at that. In fact, we have done that, not just for history, but for many subjects. When someone does something that's a little on the edge, in some cases it's perfectly appropriate. In other cases we say, well, let's think about that and do it in a different way. That's always appropriate. Yeah.
I think that'll be, that's something that will come up in the next couple of years, because we are asking our teachers to really push levels of, thought process with our kids. And I know, in English classes, they're doing a lot of really critical thinking and writing. They're doing investigative journalism, and they're checking sources, and they're doing a lot of great work where they're not just reading a book and writing a paper. So, I think that stuff will come up.
Any other comments or questions? We don't have any action to take here. Okay. Thank you very much. Now we move on to the consent calendar items in this.
What did you hope to accomplish by coming here tonight to the board meeting?
Well, I hoped, of course, I hope to get the material removed. Although realistically, we knew coming into this that wasn't going to happen. We've already been informed how this works. They're going to say that their hands are tied by the state of California. I specifically made that point in my statement to the board that federal law trumps the California Board of Education curriculum standards.
Because I'm running on low battery.
Sure.
So what you hope to accomplish was to present the information,
I want to present them,
have those specific things, specific issues as far as the Shahada, that Allah is like the one true God. Because if you want to be honest, that shouldn't be taught. There should be just the basic.
Not the dogma. And I don't have a problem with the histories of any religions. I'm not anti-Islam by any means.
Okay.
I am pro-equality for everyone.
Okay.
But you can't remove Christianity and Buddhism and Hindu, whatever. You can't remove all the other religions and replace it with Islam.
They are teaching it, but maybe 1 or 2 days in each one, where Islam they spend 3
They're
weeks.
not teaching the tenements and the beliefs. Like
So that's what you have
Islam.
an issue with.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have a problem with the history, teaching the
proselytizing and telling them that Allah is the one true God and the 5 pillars and the Shahada, how to become a Muslim.
One of the board members says they weren't proselytizing, but asking a student to recite that Allah is the one true God, or
the Shahada,
and sign it. How is that not?
And sign it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's your next steps?
Well, next steps is will probably be to go to the state. I think is our next step. What I was realistically hoping to get out of this was not. I knew we weren't going to get it removed because I knew they just can't do that at this level. But what I was hoping was at least for some look of concern in the eye of somebody on that board. But I think there was 10 issues before ours on that board, and I don't know how many boards, 5 board members, and there wasn't a no for any issue. They were a bunch of yes men. They were all yes.
Do you feel they did their due diligence in studying?
Absolutely not.
No?
Absolutely not.
So you think they basically
this is a big circus.
blew this issue off as kind of just, we'll just...
Blew it off. This guy who claims to be a history guy who's okay with what's going on, everything he said there was complete BS, and he jogged around every point that I made.
You'd be happy if Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, all the religions were taught equally, but not the dogma about how to become one of those religions, just about their core history, where they came from.
Correct. We're a nation of equality, right? We're our laws are based on equality. So if you can't teach all the religions equally, then you have to remove them all, right? So.
Or like you said, or provide equal time for each one of them.
Or provide, exactly. Or provide equal time for each one. So, and that's not happening. So something has to be done. Somebody has to stand up.
Do you think there's a bigger picture or an issue that's happening around the country that this is a small?
We had no idea what was going to happen to our job, and once we found this material in his curriculum, we began doing the research, and then we hear about a Marine who was banned from his school because he objected the same type of curriculum being taught to his daughter. I think there was all over the country, basically, we're hearing various different accounts and stories of this happening. It seems to be growing and growing and growing.
Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of people want to do something, but they don't know how to go about doing it. A lot of people aren't aware of what's going on. I don't know if enough people are paying close enough attention to what's going on in their children's assignments to get involved. So I really don't know. It's concerning to me.
Well, thank you.
I can tell you.
I'll tell you what. Thank you for your boldness. Thank you for standing up for the right information and pushing this issue. And I wish you the best of luck. And we'll be behind you praying for you guys.
Well, thank you very much for coming out. Once again, like I said, it's all about equality, and that's what we're striving for. So, thank you.
Thank you.